Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just get started in about 30 seconds. Oh, sorry. So welcome back, everyone. We'll get started with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Shinaatin people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. Next, I will do our moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. Council, looking for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, looking for someone to approve the minutes. Moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. There's a number of items on the consent. Anyone have anything they wanted to pull from consent? No? Okay, so I'll look for a mover and a seconder on those items. Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Bassick. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving right along, we're moving right into staff reports, and the first one up is digital services update. We have Brandon Curry here with a presentation. Welcome, Brandon. Nice to see you again. We look forward to your presentation.
Having me. Oh, there we go. Right, so it's been about 18 months since I was last here. So we thought we would come back with an update about just what we've been up to in terms of implementing the digital strategy and where we see things going over the next year or so. So just to, sort of remind everybody, going back, to the digital strategy itself, really had three big goals. The first one was to accelerate the city's digital maturity. And so you might remember, there was a graph that showed, based on a online service assessment, that we were behind some of our comparator municipalities when it came to digital. The second one is to standardize our digital process. So another issue was that there was just a lot of different ways of doing digital services, and we're trying to standardize and improve those across the board. And then the last one is basically what the what the users see and experience when they are using a digital service, and that's both for the staff and for public, improving that experience, because it's not always the best, and yeah, that's a big reason why we're here. And so just to remind you, there was three different phases when it came to implementing the strategy. So there was the exploring phase, which basically ran from mid-2023, when I was last here, until mid-2024. We are in the designing digital phase now. I'm going to get more into sort of what that is in a bit, but that's going to run until mid-2026, and then following that, we'll be in more of a sort of stable digital state that was envisioned from 2027 forward. So since I was last here, I think we're sort of looking at the progress that's happened in 4 different categories. And these roughly correspond to what was in the original strategy with some slight variations. So the first thing is building on our digital infrastructure. So we don't always think about digital as infrastructure, but that's how we like to think about it. Like we need to build stuff, just like anything else. When you sort of look under the hood, so to speak, of our digital landscape at the city, there's some parts missing, and we need to add those in. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was the purchase of a new website content management system. You'll be hearing more about this over the next year or so, but we're completely redesigning the look and feel and the content of our corporate website, waterloo.ca. And so that's about a year-long project that just kicked off a couple months ago. But we're envisioning a city website that works like an app. So we're not working on an app. There's a lot of advantages to just using your website and making it as customer service friendly as possible. So we're putting quite a bit of effort into that one over the next year. The second one is laying the groundwork for a customer relationship management system, or CRM. Not sure how familiar you folks are with these types of things, but basically what it will provide is a single source of information on customer interactions at the city. And that's important for a whole host of reasons, but for our outward digital services, it means that we can use that as a foundation to start building on different components. Some of them I've talked about in the past, like a single sign-on service for accessing all city services in one place. Just really helping to simplify things for people who are trying to get stuff done with us. So that is going to be rolling out over the next year or so. I've got a little bit more on that later. And then finally, the purchase and assembly of a user testing kit. So this is sort of an idea I think we borrowed from the neighborhoods people. They have like a kit they give people to like do events and stuff. So what we did was we have like a suitcase that has a bunch of just tech in it, like a laptop and some other things. And it just allows us to go to where users are and be able to roll out testing in a much more, I guess, casual setting. You know, we don't really like to have people come into City Hall because that's not where people naturally are. And so, for example, when we were working on the senior book a ride service, we went to the pavilion and had seniors come in and test a prototype of that service, give us feedback and all that stuff. So that's something that we're trying to standardize as part of all digital service projects. And so that just gives us the ability to do that testing much more quickly. So we've been able to lead the launch of several new digital services. So I'm not going to go into all of these. Happy to take questions afterwards, but basically these were either things that were not online at all before, or were partially online, and we sort of took things a step further or added more functionality to what you could do. I mean, our end goal is to be able to do end-to-end digital service where possible. And we were able to achieve that, at least in some of these cases. And so you can probably tell just looking at the variety here, we worked with many different areas across the city on these different things. Some of them are not currently online because they're seasonal, or some others are still in progress, but you know, we feel like we've been able to move quite a bit of things from, you know, either not online or partially online into that more fully online experience. So this is sort of the grunt work side of things, the not as visible side, but the part that you know, is really important for our culture and for how we you know, sort of do things as staff, is the sort of digital process that underlies all of these things that we're doing. So we've made progress in getting our standards, you know, acknowledged and published. We do have a digital steering committee that meets monthly and has representation from across the city, and helps to guide our decision making on all this stuff. You know, we look at some new and emerging issues. Obviously, AI has been, you know, the big one over this past year, and so we've done a workshop and helped to sort of create the beginnings of an AI acceptable use policy. And then one I wanted to highlight was the development of digital service usage metrics. And so one challenge that we have is because our digital service landscape takes place on a lot of different platforms. So your typical user journey might be somebody Googling something, they find something on our website, they read about some requirements or what they have to do, and then they go in a different application to actually complete that transaction. Like if you think about swimming lessons or something like that, that actually takes place in the ActiveNet application. And so we're trying to build a measurement model that will take into account that entire process, so we're able to see from start to finish what that looks like. It's a kind of a complicated endeavor because there's a lot of different vendors and technologies at play, but we're really trying to get to the point of being able to see from start to finish how people are behaving in all of our different digital service environments, with the goal of, obviously improving that, getting more people to use that over time and all that good stuff. And finally, one piece of what we do is sort of more, helping different business units bring projects to market or online. And so in a number of cases, we've sort of helped different business units get their projects across the finish line with, the right kind of brand and digital standards, so that things are matching up with our website and sort of behaving, in the most usable way for anyone who's trying to use them. Okay, so looking ahead to the next year, so Waterloo.ca relaunch, I've already mentioned that one. CRM procurement and implementation. So we are looking to hopefully have an RFP ready by early next year on that front, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that as time goes on. An approved digital components list. This is an interesting one for us. One thing that we haven't been able to do yet is to sort of have standardized digital things that staff know they can use. So an example would be a bookings tool for self-booking. So I'm sure you've all used something like this where you're trying to book a meeting or something with someone and they send you their calendar and you can just see the available times and you go in and book it. It's great. You can change it if you need to, all that stuff. Well, we have several divisions here at the city that would like to use something like that because they spend a lot of time going back and forth with people, what time are you available and all that stuff. And so we have a tool, Microsoft Bookings, that has now been gone through the proper privacy and security screenings, and we would like to get that into the hands of city staff across the board so that they know if they have to do self-booking, this is the tool to do it, this is the process, and we don't have to worry about procuring a new tool, wondering how to do it. Like, we can basically replicate using these components for like service patterns that we see across the board. And so that's just one example. We'd like to do the same thing with different types of intake forms, payments, registration, like all of these things that we have to do for almost all of our services, but we're still doing in many different ways. And so by having an approved components list, we can help get things online more quickly. Obviously, it's less expensive if we're reusing technology we already have and all that good stuff. So I think with that, I will open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Appreciate the presentation and the work that's been done to date. So I'll turn to council. See who has questions. We'll start with Councillor Rowe.
Thank you so much for the information and the presentation. I was just wondering about the link in the strat plan. And so it says that you're providing digital options for customer service that are user-friendly and as accessible as possible, supports the accessibility and inclusion work of the Ready Priority. So I just wondered if you could give some examples of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. I think accessibility is always top of mind when we're thinking about digital service. Like the digital landscape has like a lot of good potential for helping with a lot of these issues. And so I think, one of the big ones is doing the user testing. As I mentioned, really making sure that what we're putting out is meeting people's needs, and not waiting for negative feedback to come in later, but actually testing things at the prototype stage with affected populations is something that we've done and we're looking to do more of, especially in the context of the new website project. We really want to make sure that that's going to work for everybody who wants to use a website to do stuff. And so there's a lot of different components within that. We're very big on plain language, making sure that things are explained as simply as possible within our municipal landscape. It's a challenge sometimes. And making sure that things on the website are compatible with screen readers, keyboard navigation, translation, working on all kinds of different devices, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think, that's one way we support accessibility just overall. And then there's, different sort of more specialized things that we do. Something that I think was in the report, I didn't make it in the presentation, was we bought new software to do PDF remediation. As you might know, PDFs are really problematic when it comes to accessibility. They don't work really easily on screen readers. And so we purchased a product that we felt would have much better outcomes in terms of the end product for folks who are trying to do something like use a screen reader to read a council report. And so, we've invested in that side of things. We've helped our City Ready team also along the way with a number of things, helping them get their sort of story out on our website. So we have some pretty good resources there, and also working with them currently on some ways of showing their progress through like dashboards and different data visualizations and stuff like that.
That's great. Thank you for the additional information.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Other questions from council? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks for this report. It was fun to kind of look through the breadth of activities that are being undertaken, and I really, from a content management system to a CRM implementation, that's a lot of stuff. So I can really appreciate the full scope of that, having been through such processes myself in the past. Which brings me to the question, which is, how are you working with staff to bring them along in this journey? Because that's, a huge part of it. Service design is one part for our residents and them being able to access the city in a digital format, but the other half of the equation is clearly staff.
Yeah, for sure. And not everyone's familiar with some of these principles that we're talking about, and we realize that and we recognize that. Taking the time with folks to explain, how things work online these days, like it changes so fast. I think, oftentimes we're doing some education along with things like service design or defining requirements and all of that kind of stuff. I think we've, naturally found ourselves working more with staff that have a lot of customer service pressure because they feel that need for better service, and we're kind of naturally aligned on a lot of those things. The CRM project, for example, that's being done in conjunction with the customer service team at the service center. And so there's a lot of synergy with those areas. I think we're, in this first phase, we were looking for some of those like, quick wins or low-hanging fruit, like all that kind of stuff. And so I think we ended up working with some of the teams that naturally wanted to do service improvement anyways. Now when it comes time to do the website, we have to do everything. So that will lead us into places and different corners of the city where we haven't, had the chance to work with folks. But I think that, our strategy is to, explain to them what, what we feel digital can do to help their business goals. And usually that helps to unlock, a lot of potential. when it comes to just being constructive and trying to figure out how to bring their stuff online a bit more fully, or really just making sure that we're trying to be in that intersection of business goal and user need, and figuring out where that is. And we've had a lot of success sort of using that model when we're talking to folks, and so that seems to bring people along. There's been a lot of people asking about AI, so I think that will be the next thing we'll have to do a little bit more like education on, just even like what are we even talking about when it comes to AI? Like there's a lot of different components to it. We're intending to draft a policy and to have some governance structure around that. But I think part of our role is to help talk about that with the organization and help to bring them along. And that's a role that wasn't necessarily in the digital strategy, but it's one that's just sort of naturally evolved. And it's something we'll be probably doing more of.
Yep, did you have a follow-up, Councillor?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So my follow-up really has to do with that AI question. Some weeks ago, I was in a federal government workshop on a data strategy that they were working on. And very intentionally, they unpacked why they're not using the term AI, why they're specifically talking about machine learning. And I wonder if that's something that we might take note of as well in our work. It's something that just keeps coming up over and over again, the difference between the hype and the utility aspect of it, and what's kind of near term and what is maybe science fiction still at this point. Just wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the first points, I think, in our AI workshop, was that like this idea of machine learning has been around for decades. And in some cases, we've been using software and other applications that have AI principles built into them, and we didn't even really know it. And now, now that AI is a really hot topic, we've all of a sudden trying to figure out, okay, what has AI, what doesn't, and it's really just a big mix of stuff. And so I think that's a helpful suggestion, is what's the generative AI piece versus what's machine learning, and what are the differences and all of that. And it's something that we're definitely still obviously learning about ourselves. And we're not looking to AI-ify our website or anything like that. Our customer service team did do some like chatbot scan. I'm not sure if that made its way to council or not, but they asked other cities how it was going with generative AI chatbots, and it generally wasn't going so hot. And so we are looking at some different options for when we relaunch the website. You may have noticed recently when you do a Google search, an AI description is the first thing you get. So we think that's probably where things are headed when it comes to search. And so we're hoping to have a generative AI search as part of our relaunched website. So when you enter in a search term, it doesn't just give you the standard list of links and pages. It will actually attempt to script together a nice answer, which could be a big improvement as long as we can get it to work well.
Just to follow up on Councillor Wright's question on AI, given what you've just said, I'm just wondering, like you said that we're already using it in various forms already and have for years. Just could you give us a couple, not to put you on the spot, but could you give us a couple quick examples of where it is already embedded into our processes and our system?
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen it in your everyday life. Like every new tool now says it's powered by AI, or there's some sort of AI component to it. And so like, I think one of the first things I noticed was when we shifted to Microsoft 365, we started getting all these suggestions in our like email about, hey, maybe include this attachment, maybe this is a part of that. And it's like, there's already these little like micro AI things happening, and you kind of notice them over time. I do know that our city utilities has they run their CCTV footage through some sort of AI enabled thing that helps to scan for defects or problems with the infrastructure, and obviously combing through hours of data isn't something that we would pay someone to do. So it's a good use case. The generative piece around the website is another one that we're definitely looking at and working on. You know, we don't exactly know if staff are using ChatGPT and things to generate stuff. We don't currently have a policy on that, which is why we're looking to bring something forward. And so, yeah, we're aware of some examples, but we definitely don't have like a governance structure that would allow us to have a full picture of what's happening right now, which is one of the reasons why we need to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from council? I just have a couple, if no one else has any. I'm curious about the building application portal. I know it said that it's in development, but is some of the $1 million that we received from the provincial government, the Streamlining Development Fund, I think it was called, is some of that money going into building that portal?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's fantastic. And I'm just curious, in some of the work that you're doing, there's the University of Waterloo launched this, or worked with some private sector. They had a donation to launch an institute called Future Cities. So I'm just wondering if you're working with them on any elements of this, or like if that's one of the groups you're testing or talking to about some of the initiatives, and particularly with the building application and the development portal, because I recently saw a demo of a couple of students from the University of Waterloo who have various pieces of, I think, what we're looking for. It's not fully built out, but just wondering how you're connected with some other community partners like that in this work.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's not something that we've proactively sought out at this point. We can definitely take that back and look at the Future Cities area. I think we've worked with a lot of graduates of the universities over the years, but not directly with any of their active programs in that area.
There's from when I was out at FCM in June, there was a presentation by, I forget, there was a variety of cities there, but Kelowna was one of them. And they, that's someone, I think, an organization you should check in with, because they are very much, I think, ahead of most municipalities across the country, at least, with a portal using like they can basically go, hey Siri, and it geolocates you. Can I do X, Y, or Z in terms of like building department or things of that nature. And so they really have done a lot of work on that. And then as well, some of these local companies that I just saw last week with the launch of the relaunch of Velocity at the Innovation Arena in Kitchener, there was some students there demonstrating some of their ideas and their startups. So I just wouldn't want to, of course, duplicate efforts that have already, seem to be well down the path.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked to Kelowna in the past because we also really like what they're doing. Richmond and Surrey are also really good for digital services. And so we do have an active sort of peer network when it comes to this stuff. In Ontario, we've talked to Oakville quite a few times as well. They have they did a digital strategy about 4 or 5 years before we did. And you can kind of see the benefits of that now. And so it's kind of a nice window into what things could look like for us. So check out Town of Oakville's website and their service area, and that will give you a bit of an idea of what we're envisioning.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my other question was around the dispute a ticket piece. And was just wondering, is that about parking tickets, or is this because we know there's the new speeding ticket process that's coming in, and will that be linked up somehow, or are you just talking about parking tickets? Or and if you're not, how does the speeding piece factor in?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to defer to municipal enforcement on some of this stuff, but it was intended to be for the administrative monetary penalty system across the board. So not just for a specific ticket type. So it's my understanding that you could dispute a ticket for not clearing your snow or not cutting your grass or any of those penalty types through this dispute system, and so they were really looking to cut down on the amount of time they spend adjudicating the disputes through doing that. And so, yeah, we're really looking forward to that one coming online. We got to do some more involved design with that one, and so we're really really excited to see where that one goes.
Yeah, that does sound really positive. So I'm just double checking if I had any other questions. I think Councillor Wright asked my questions. So thank you very much. I don't know if Council had any other questions. No, thanks very much for the work on this. I think we've all heard, how our customer service, while good, always needs to improve, because we are very much in the public service business and want to work as collaboratively and as quickly with our residents as possible. So I think this is taking us a long way towards that goal. So really look forward to the implementation of these various programs and portals and processes. So thanks very much for the work that the team's doing, and look forward to the next update and the launch as well. So thank you very much. So we do have a recommendation. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. We do have a recommendation to receive this report as information. So moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Brandon and Carrie, and any others in the who've contributed to this. So moving on, we have road safety countermeasures and traffic calming implementation. Certainly, as we all know, hearing about traffic calming and speeding is one of the #1 concerns we hear from our residents on a year-over-year basis. So we looking forward to this report. Bob Henderson has some opening remarks to make. Thanks, Bob. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. Through you to members of council. I'm certainly happy here today to be presenting this report to council. But before I get into too many details, I want to first thank our team of dedicated and staff, including Jenny Renault, Ainsley Rigo, and Hayden Kozner for their very hard work and dedication in producing this plan. They have done a fantastic job and are excited to see it come to fruition, as well as myself. Just to start off, this is an area of road safety and a part of transportation that I personally am very proud of. I think it's one of the most rewarding things that we can do in this business, and that's reducing injuries and deaths on our roadways. It's something fantastic and heartwarming that we can certainly see in our business. Council, I'm happy today to advise you that the city has established a comprehensive plan to reduce injuries and deaths on our roadways. We have put forth a data-driven and science-based road safety plan that sets forth a path towards becoming a Vision Zero city. That's a city with no deaths or serious injuries on our roadways. This is the foundation for us as a city to move forward, providing residents and visitors to Waterloo safer roads to travel on, whether they're walking, biking, driving, or rolling. Our plan is fluid, and we can adapt as necessary over time. I would like to highlight 5 key steps in the city's road safety implementation plan. It begins with the collection of data. That's collecting traffic volumes, 5-year collision histories, and speed profiles for the city's entire road system. Secondly, it's prioritizing safety. We do this by running collision prediction models, comparing our models' predictions to actual collisions, and then prioritizing locations that experience more collisions than predicted. Thirdly, we prioritize traffic calming measures. We're excited to advise you that we're now utilizing state-of-the-art methods to obtain speed data through connected vehicle data sources. That data source provides us with speed data for practically every street in the city. Leveraging larger data sources such as this enables our team to strategically prioritize traffic calming measures throughout the city more effectively. Perhaps the most important step is implementing our road safety measures. We intend to implement safety measures over the next year, as well as incorporating them into future capital projects where appropriate. And lastly, it is critical that we monitor our progress. over the next year as we incorporate measures into future capital projects. Lastly, it is critical that we monitor our progress and adjust our plan as needed in order to drive it forward in the right direction towards zero injuries and deaths. Thank you, and I'm happy to say that Jenny, Ainsley, and myself are here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. And yep, we've got some questions here. Thank you as well, Ainsley and Jenny. We'll start with Councillor Rowe.
Thank you so much, Bob, and Ainsley and Jenny and staff for working on this. A lot of the locations that we're looking at implementation are in Ward 6. So it's really important, I think, from a student perspective and a community perspective, that this work has brought us here so that we can address some of those challenges. So thank you. My question is about implementation for areas that require multiple measures when ranked differently. So in Ward 6, for example, we have same location, which would be in car collisions, pedestrian, and cyclists. So what I'm wondering about is, moving forward, how would the implementation look in this case? Like, are we looking at 3 different things? Are we looking all at once? Like, how does that work moving forward?
Sure, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Rowe. The intent is to come to one location as a whole. And so while it may rank differently for different users, what we'll be doing is in the implementation, looking at, say, Phillip Street, all the implementation happening at once. It's to reduce the disruption in the neighborhood, make sure that we're having a wholesome implementation, and so that once they're installed, we can start doing some countermeasures or some evaluation to see how it's working. It may not always be at the same time, but that's our goal.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Great presentation and long anticipated report to come forward. So thank you for all your work on this. A couple things struck me as I was reading through it. I didn't see anything about just public education around expectations on some of the measures. And I'm thinking of questions in time, Jenny, in particular, that you and I have worked on over this last year, where education has gone a long way in helping people understand what their accountabilities are as well, and that we can't just put a speed bump in for the sake of putting a speed bump in, but just what some of the other options might be. Is that somewhere in the plan, and did I just miss it?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hammer, no, you didn't miss it, but we've been working very closely with our partners in communication. As the new digital strategy is unrolling, the new website information is also unrolling. So we are working with them on what information is really going to be useful for residents on our website. And then whatever potentially is not there, what we'll do is through particular specific campaigns in each neighborhood as things roll out.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And one more, if I might. The other thing that struck me too, a lot of the areas, and I don't disagree that these are areas that need to have some focus, we do have other spots throughout the city that also intersect with regional roads, and I didn't really see much in here about what we were doing. So can you just share with us what supports and planning is happening with the region where the roads are overlapping and we have a lot of the similar issues?
Thank you for the question, through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Hamner. So we are certainly coordinating efforts with our regional counterparts for intersections that fall under their jurisdiction. So as it relates to intersections that are in Waterloo that intersect with regional roads, we're even closer to the situation as well. So we're working hand in hand with those partners to improve road safety. We can always recommend measures to the region. However, they have their own processes too and their own road safety program where they're making countermeasure improvements as well. I used to be a part of that program, so the programs are running very similar now and hand in hand.
Hence my question. I knew you were part of that. It also ties back to my question though around the education and just thinking broader public education, talking about what we are doing collectively to try to improve road safety throughout the region. Whenever we have that opportunity to do both education, I think it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. and you don't miss things very often, so. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. Thank you for the report and for the work that was put into it. I just wondered if you could expand a bit more on Councillor Hanmer's question about the digital strategy. Might it get to a place where someone could say, I live on this road and I think it's a bad road and I want to look it up, and is that the intention?
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman. So I can assure you that we've been talking with our digital strategy folks and recommending some enhancements to our website to get there at some point in time. We want to start out small and provide some basic information at first, but ultimately what you're suggesting is where we would like to go.
So on that front, like, we've removed the ability for someone to ask for a traffic calming study or a traffic speed study off of our website. My understanding is that link's gone, and we're saying that we're looking at our traffic strategy. So how are we responding to those questions now? Because, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only councillor who gets those emails that say, I want you to put speed humps on my road because I'm a traffic engineer in my part-time job.
Good question. Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Freeman. Just to expand, we've also been looking at opportunities to use our open data and our maps. So not only can you go and ask for something, but linking it to data that's freely available. There's a lot of other municipalities that are doing that, so we're looking at how we can get our new and confident data on there as well. It's just because we've removed the link to request something, we still have our roads at Waterloo email and our traffic at Waterloo email, and they still phone in through the service center to request. We still are accepting and are very welcoming to all of those requests that come in. What we have the ability now to do is give quicker, data-driven answers back on where that street is, to say, well, thank you for that, but this is where the street is, here's where it ranks, here's what the speeds are, here's what we can do. And if there's any low-hanging fruit or things that we can do right off the bat, like maybe painting a center line if it's going to help, in advance of any of this screening, we'll still do that.
Thanks. There's a lot of recommendations that are asking the region to affect change on. Do we have any sense of whether or not the region will be able to affect those changes in a timely manner?
Through the mayor to Councillor Freeman, yes, actually we've been in discussions with them already, and they've actually implemented a few things for us at a couple intersections. So they are amenable to it. We just have to make sure it works on both of our ends. But yeah, we've had really good conversations with them so far.
Thank you, that's certainly good to hear. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. I just wanted to commend you for this report. It's one of the most thorough, well-constructed, really well put together reports, and highlights not only the challenges, but what some of the prospective or potential solutions to those challenges are. It's an excellent report, and just to see where some of these reports have come from in my first term of council to today is been really great. So thank you for that. And I also want to highlight the sort of connected vehicle data. I know that I've asked on behalf of residents for information on certain streets in my ward when they're making assertions, as Councillor Freeman alluded to. And it's been just really, as a data freak, it's been kind of interesting to see, like, it goes from here to here, it's this speed, and then from here to here, it's this speed, and you can see how people are going faster and slowing down and how many cars there are, et cetera. And to rank those and have that sort of data-driven approach has been really, really wonderful, and without having to wait 12 months for a traffic study. So it's really, really great. My question, I have a couple of questions. So I think it's unsurprising, I guess, that the majority of our collision concerns are happening on city-owned streets that have the most traffic on it. Obviously, that would be logical: Columbia, Albert, Phillip. And also, these are the streets that have the most pedestrian and cycling activity as well, too. Obviously, when you have more cars and more pedestrians and cyclists, the likelihood of conflict is going to be higher. And so I'm curious about some of these streets. whether or not we are considering more of a like comprehensive review for some of those streets in the future, either to potentially guide like future road reconstructions or to highlight proactive measures such as ones highlighted in the report along the entire stretch. Like an example would be Columbia from Hagee to Weber. Instead of looking at the section that's been highlighted as problematic, are we looking along the whole, or will we be looking along the whole stretch?
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Bodley. Yes, we are, for those streets in particular, our major arterials, longer corridors, University Conservation, Columbia, those are all going to be done. We're going to be looking at those as a larger project, as probably a standalone within the capital, because there are so many locations along there. So what we'll be looking at is in the next budget cycle, looking for something like an environmental assessment for the corridor.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was curious about. So thank you for that. And just a follow-up or a second question through you, Mayor, is again, obviously these are the heavier traffic areas, but as has been alluded to, like we have a lot of complaints and concerns around a variety of neighborhood streets, in particular in and around school zones during pickup and drop-off. And so I'm curious about how, as we move forward, sort of past these significant areas of challenge for us, how we might use this data to tackle some of the issues when it comes to neighborhood streets going forward, even though they might not rise to the priority level of a Columbia Street. How can we ensure that our neighborhood streets where our children are playing are also part of this program, even though they might not rise to that level from a priority perspective?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Bodley. So there's a few other programs that we're doing in concert with this as well. So we have the pedestrian crossover implementation, so that's going all running at the same time. We also work very closely with Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region and the schools and all the schools and the boards, the administration on school travel planning so that we can make the journey to and from school a safe one. So all of that goes into, those programs are already going along. The data will help us support perhaps where we prioritize those areas. The other thing would be is this year we just focused on from some of the speed lens, we focused on those that were 15 kilometers over an hour over the operating speed. In future years, what we might be able to do is do a little bit further cleaning and screening into those that are a little bit lower, like maybe 10 kilometers. And that really gets into our local streets and we'll be able to prioritize accordingly.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And now we'll go to Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. Through you, Mayor McCabe. Councillor Hanmer's question actually prompted my question. Thank you for the report. So I saw that there's almost 3,000 collisions in that 5-year study on City of Waterloo roads. That doesn't include the collisions on regional roads. Am I correct? How do we find the amount of collisions on regional roads? The reason I'm asking is because the people in my neighborhood aren't so much concerned about what's a regional road and what's a city road. They're concerned about safety. And there's a major regional road that bisects my ward, and I'm in Ward 3, and that's Northfield Drive. And there are 3 schools where kids have to cross Northfield Drive every day, 3 primary schools. And so I just maybe it really helped me again understand, like I heard you're in good discussions with the region, but like how does City of Waterloo really coordinate with the region of Waterloo regarding the safety of Waterloo citizens as they use regional roads? Like, if there's an accident in Northfield, it's not in the data here. And we're talking about getting excellent data for the safety of our citizens of Waterloo. I don't see how we don't include that accident in our Northfield.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Roach. Good question. So the way we do that is essentially by coordinating with our regional counterparts. They do run a similar road safety report for collisions on regional roads and highlight intersections that are problematic as well. We're happy to work with council in any capacity that we can to raise flags about safety issues that you might have and work with our regional counterparts to address. That's really the mechanism to do it.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor?
No, just a comment that, you know, we have a master plan and a commitment to Vision Zero, and that Vision Zero seems to be Vision Zero on city roads, not on regional roads. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really, it's a really important point because similar to some other, like, I think it was Councillor Hanmer's question too about, you know, having a full picture of like what's really happening on our roadway and our road network, whether it's city or regional road, is really important. And as you said, Councillor, you know, we're talking about in some cases little, like our youngest residents trying to get back and forth from schools or daycares or wherever they're going. So it is really, really important. But I think, so if I could just, I know there's a couple others in the queue, but just to tag on to that question, with the work that the region's doing on the speeding and the community safety zones and targeting, you know, we need to provide a list as the city to the region around what are our target areas, our top areas. So I think, is that the process through which, like, you know, roads like Northfield, and I'm sure we could all name roads in every ward that are particularly troublesome, but that's the process through which we would begin to start to address some of these concerns, right? Like, is that correct? Like, is that where some of this coordination will happen?
Absolutely. We're meeting with our colleagues at the region on a frequent basis, and we're always discussing road safety issues. Again, I'm happy to work with council in any capacity that we can to share the messages that are concerns with this council to our regional counterparts. The Community Safety Zone program and the Automated Speed Enforcement program, we work very closely with our regional counterparts to come up with practices that roll out those programs across the region seamlessly so that it's like one jurisdiction. I know it's two jurisdictions, but we work together like one team.
That's great. And although it would be interesting to know what the total amount of collisions are, regional and city combined, if you can get that and just maybe send us an email, or if you can look that up even in the course of there's a few more questions in the queue, but it is interesting again to know really what the full picture of road safety is in the community. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Roach? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
okay.
no, I'm good. I think that's an excellent point you make. Let's get the data of the safety in Waterloo, which includes major regional roads.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I also want to applaud you for this report. I found it really, really interesting. It obviously has lots of intersections with sorry about that pun. That was a low-hanging one. So yeah, really appreciate the attention to a number of important intersection areas. So I'm going to start off with one of those intersections first, just to get a little more detail. So on our top 10 pedestrian collision list, we have Regina and Lodge Street. Are these in a hierarchical order, or are they just like any order of the 10?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wright, they are in ranked order.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification, because I guess the concern I have here is if that is the number one for pedestrian collisions and we don't have any countermeasures currently in place there, I'm curious as to why the recommended countermeasures are so minor. And I don't want to diminish the actual countermeasures, but I think I would have expected something more robust. I know it's not that far from a four-way stop, but because of the little curve in the road there, the visibility is really challenging. And so I do have people inquiring. I shared the report as much as I could with Uptown Neighborhood Associations who had been advocating for particular countermeasures over time. And so that one just really jumped out to people who were having a look at the report. So I just wanted to ask about that first.
So thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Wright. The recommended countermeasures, albeit seem to be minor in nature, they're actually not. Like realigning a road, I think it was excellent on the part of staff to recognize that there's sightline issues at this intersection, and they're making recommendations such as improving the lane alignment on the approach to the intersection and also enhancing sightline through parking amendments. So I think they've really hit the root of the issue at this intersection, and it's about targeting the appropriate countermeasure to the problem at hand at these intersections, and I believe staff have done that.
Thanks for that. And so then would that mean that the, along the intersection there between Regina and Lodge, that the corners would be fully daylighted, or is that, so it is a full daylighting?
We'll do as much as we can to pull the intersection in. It's really wide, and there is a corner, and it's kind of on a grade as well. So we're going to work with our counterparts in engineering to try and come up with pulling the intersection in. And by doing that, we actually pull in and create visibility and daylighting triangles where nothing will be there except pedestrian facilities.
Okay, I really appreciate that. I mean, that section of Regina is really just so challenging, and I noted the other spot where you've got Regina and Necker, that there's a PXO recommended there, and or was it a four-way? No.
We're going to upgrade to an
Yeah.
all-way stop there,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, so breaking up the traffic is I think going to have a significant effect there. So as long as we're, taking an iterative approach and that we can continue to layer measures as we go along, like I think it'll be important to kind of see how how more than one measure then impacts the whole stretch of road there. So the second comment I just had kind of builds on some of the other queries about the collision data. So we're working with police-reported collision data, and every day for every one of these collisions that is reported to the police, I don't know what the ratio might be, 5 to 1 of near misses. My husband happened to be one of those near misses yesterday. He almost got run over by a pickup truck. And another recent report to me came from the corner of Father David Bauer and Caroline, and I know I've shared that one about the intersection of the multi-use trail. And everywhere where we've got two-way traffic for active transportation, but one-way traffic for road vehicles, it becomes a challenging situation where we end up with a lot of near misses, so many near misses. And so what I'm hoping is that somewhere in here we can start to collect some citizen data just on those sorts of near misses, so that we're starting to put together a deeper picture of what people are experiencing on a day-to-day level. These are the non-police reported incidents. Sometimes a collision happens and you don't call the cops. So it's just factoring in this level of kind of the ambient level of collision incident that is happening in a way that we can maybe create a deeper picture, much in the same way as you would report something to the non-emergency form through the Waterloo Police. Just to get that picture. And it might help us with some more context.
Yes, through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Wright. That's a great point, and I didn't mention it in my introductory comments, but just very recently, the city was awarded a grant opportunity to obtain more connected vehicle data, and this is where the city's road safety plan is going to go to the top level. I'd say A++ level if there's anything such as that. But what that does is it's incorporating connected vehicle data that includes near-miss data, hard braking, hard acceleration, and we'll work that information into our collision prediction models so that it beefs up where we should be looking at. It just doesn't incorporate collision reporting at the police. It incorporates real world incidents that are not reported.
So just as a follow-up to that question, is that relying on the vehicles themselves, like the telemetrics part of it through insurance?
That's correct.
Okay, so that also relies on the vehicle being a fairly new model vehicle that would have that. Like what year of vehicle would that be starting with?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the data, the vendor that we're working with, they have contracts with over 40 different car manufacturers, and over 40 million cars are in this network that we're getting within North America. But there is a large number, and it is statistically validated. But the other two things that I wanted to kind of add on top of that are, we're also looking at opportunities to tap into some of our own cameras, so that we can go out to key intersections or streets or road segments and have our own analyses and get conflict data or near-miss data on top of this. As well as, you make a really good point about citizen input, and that could be something we could chat with communications about, to see if there's some way for us to source, pin it on a map and tell me what's happening to get that data.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Those were, you've asked most of my questions as well, because I was really concerned about the near misses and things like that. And if I could just add to that list, red lights, because I know personally, I've nearly been hit more times than I can count when I used to walk my kids to school. With people turning right on red lights when they're looking to their left and not looking to see where pedestrians are entering the intersection. So if you could add that to your list, that would be great. Councillor Freeman.
Sorry, just some questions came up in my mind's eye. So with regard to the top speed locations over 15 kilometers, I just wanted to point out that Bluevale Street North is not in my ward. It's in Councillor Vasquez's ward. It's not Ward 4, it's Ward 5. But more broadly, Ward 5 and Ward 4, the University Avenue stretches were the majority of the top speed locations. And of course, there's some really important pedestrian connections there into St. Matthew's Public School, into Lexington Public School, into Millen Woods, Lester B. Pearson, and St. Luke's, and also frequently some of the able-bodied citizens that reside at Parkwood Mennonite community, they want to go to the library, and that double PXO on University Avenue, people really do not understand they have to press the button twice to make that PXO work to get over to Rim Park. And so there's an awful lot of pedestrian conflicts. I would think that that there's a lot of near misses that happen near that double PXO. And I don't know whether council knows what I'm talking about, but on University, you have to cross halfway. And when you get to the center island, you have to press the button a second time to cross the second half of the laneway. And even though there's lots and lots of signs, because of the fact too that the vehicles are traveling at the 85th percentile is more than 5 kilometers over the speed limit along there, it's a real concern for road users, and especially vulnerable road users. So I'm just hopeful that maybe some motivation can happen with regard to looking at that, whether at Pasture and Trail, even though the region was quite contrary to putting in a full pedestrian signal there, I think the city just signed an agreement and took responsibility for the signal and said that we would pay to do the operation and maintenance. And I would much prefer to see a true signal at that piece now, because it's, we're asking people for the volleyball tournaments and everything to walk there from various locations. There's no reason why citizens from Eastridge shouldn't be able to walk there, unless of course they're carrying goalie equipment, but there's just, there is so much opportunity for that intersection. I'd really like to see if we can do something different there. And this data really highlights in my mind's eye a problem for that stretch of road. And it's concerning to me too that Bluevale, because it is absolutely full of students either going to St. Agnes or going to Bluevale, and to see the speeds like this is unfortunate, and it's a curve approach to St. Agnes and Bluevale, and I think we really need to prioritize what we're doing on that road. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on but it said Ward 4. So Ward 4 and Ward 5 sometimes think alike.
That's okay. You can care about residents in Ward 4 and Ward 5. It's okay. But thank you. Did you have another question or no? Okay. So sorry, did you have a question, Councillor Bassick?
I didn't. I have asked staff, so I'm confident about what's happening on Bluevale. But since you brought Bluevale up through you, Mayor, can you just explain what's going to happen on Bluevale, please? Or I can remind you that you're going to review it in 2025 and then implement the warranted measures, which is already accounted for in the budget, and it will be prioritized in future budgets if additional measures are warranted.
That is correct, thank you. I wanted to find my notes, so I was going to speak to precisely the correct information. Thank you, that is correct.
Thank you very much. And seeing I thought that's all the questions. Thanks very much to the three of you and others who worked on this report and certainly on this issue. I think, given that you can hear and see how many questions were asked by all members of council, how important this is to the city and to our residents. We know that speeding and traffic issues and near misses are something that, and collisions obviously are things that we hear about constantly. I think it's probably the number one thing that we hear about across the city, and that's not new. It's for years and years and years that's been the case. If we want people to, particularly with kids, be able to go out and explore and take part in the community. We, as parents, we want them to be safe and we want the infrastructure to be safe, but people also have to feel safe. And so I think what you're outlining in the report here really goes a long way to making sure that not only is the infrastructure safe, but that people feel confident that they can, whatever their age is, that they can go out and, explore the community. But again, particularly for me, I'm thinking about some of the youngest in our community because, we all want our kids out going out to have fun or going to see their friends or going to work or school or whatever it is. But we also want them to come home at the end of the day safe and sound. So thanks very much for this, and we look forward to seeing some of the implementation and the changes that are going to be coming. And I do need there are a couple of recommendations here. Do I have a mover, Councillor Bodley, and a seconder, Councillor Hanmer? All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are moving on to Urbsville Road MESP and District Plan Terms of Reference, and we have an introduction by Tristan Devereaux. Thank you, Tristan. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor McCabe and members of council. So yes, staff reports, IPW 24059 is presenting council with a draft terms of reference for a master environmental servicing plan and district plan terms of reference for the Urbsville North neighborhood, which is centered around the Urbsville North and Conservation Drive intersection. We're asking for council's approval of the terms of reference, which will authorize the creation of these two studies. So the MESP is basically a combined process that combines a lot of technical and environmental studies, things like sub-watershed studies, servicing, transportation, cultural heritage evaluation, archaeological assessments, things like that, into a combined process. And then those studies will then inform the development of a new district plan, which will then direct land use and development in the study area over time. So this is a privately initiated study. There's a consulting team made up of MHBC Planning, Natural Resources Solutions, Paradigm Transportation Solutions, and MTE Consulting, who represent some of the landowners in the areas to take on this work. The terms of reference defines the process that's going to be taken, the timeline, the public consultation and engagement that will take place over the course of the study and project, as well as the study area. There's a primary study area, which is where the eventual district plan would be established. That's all within the city boundaries. And then there's a secondary study area, which basically just reflects that in order to get all the information you need for the study area, you have to look a little bit beyond the border of the actual study area as well for some of that background information and to track natural features and things like that. So the city is involved in this process through our participation in a technical review committee. So city staff as well as regional GRCA staff will be participating in the process, and there'll be multiple sessions for public engagement as well as information being presented to council, with the end result of the process being, like I said, the MESP plans and studies being completed and a final district plan for the area coming back to council for approval at a later date. So yes, should council approve the terms of reference, that'll basically be the official kickoff of the start of the project. And the consultant is already planning the first public engagement sessions for the neighborhood on December 11th as kind of a first open house and introduction to what the process is going to look like and how people can be involved. And yeah, that's basically it. I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have Dave Ashton from MHBC in the audience as well, if there are any questions for them.
Great, thank you very much, Tristan. So council, any questions? Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through your mayor. I have a question and a handful of comments, maybe. So you alluded to the secondary study area, and you also alluded to this, but I just want to confirm and recommit to this, I suppose, that the intent for that secondary study area, particularly as it goes out into the township of Woolwich, is simply to characterize the area, consider the environmental impact, infrastructure, et cetera, and how that might impact the primary study area. And particularly given that it is outside of the urban boundary, I wanted to confirm and sort of recommit that this is not in antithesis to our dedication to the countryside line, and to ensure that the intent of reviewing this is not with an eye towards the city expanding into the outside of its urban boundary or recommending development in that area. And also, I'm hoping that you can highlight as part of your answer how, if the Township of Woolwich is engaged in this review process going forward.
Thank you for the questions. So through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Bodley. Yes, so as you said, the intent of the secondary study area is really just to gather that additional information. Natural features don't follow municipal boundaries and things like that. So you have the expanded study area just to give us a more full picture. The actual land use plan, the policy direction and new official plan policies that will come into effect through the district plan will solely apply to lands within the Waterloo municipal boundaries. The townships will be involved through the technical review committee, which, like I said, city staff is a part of, as well as regional and GRCA, and then we would also be kind of a conduit to other agencies, such as the township, to get them involved in the process and get their comments, and they'll be invited to any of the engagement meetings as well.
Okay, that's all the questions you have for now? Okay, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. So with regard to the scope watershed study, we ran into challenges on this side of town in the past because the scope was too small. And because there's a pretty large environmental sensitive protective area around there, and the headwaters for some of the downstream creeks and infiltration zones for the groundwater resources are pretty steep in that area. So I'm just worried how tight we scoped this.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman. So the scope of the study was, and the scopes as identified within the terms of reference was developed with by the consultant, but involving city staff and as well as regional and GRCA. The intent will to be further define the studies and get the information needed, and then the land use plan will kind of build on what is actually feasible based on what the environmental conditions are and the servicing conditions. And for any more specific information on the actual engineering scope, I do have colleagues from engineering here as well. I don't know if Dave wants to respond more specifically. Could throw that out there, but since it is a coordinated study, there's the planning piece as well as the engineering and kind of environmental piece involving experts both from the consulting firms as well as the city to kind of make sure that the studies are reasonable and what can actually be implemented based on the information that's gathered through this process.
Is part of your question, because I'm sorry, is it Dave? Okay, so if I'm not sure if you wanted Dave to respond to that as well, Councillor, but is part of your question you're concerned that it should have gone out further?
Well,
or like who decides, or how was the decision made around how tightly scoped it was?
So with regard to the watershed on that side of town, it's quite large. And we've had to go back and redo the study, like when we did the conservation areas, the conservation drive district plan for other areas, it wasn't sufficient because we didn't go far enough upstream to look at the floodplain hydraulics. And I guess I'm trying to say that if we're gonna do this, I'd rather do it once. And if we need to go to a natural hydraulic break farther north of the boundaries, it makes sense to do it because it's gonna be less expensive to do it. Especially when we start looking too at things like meander lines and so on, because I'd rather just do it once. And I really worry about that because there's an awful lot of integration on the environmental sensitive protected areas. And like I said, our groundwater recharge. I'm just channeling a little bit of Kevin right now because I've once burned, twice learned on this side of town.
No, they're good questions.
Get this right.
Yeah, no, it's good questions. So I see that Dave's coming up to the microphone. So if either of you want to share an answer on this, I think it is a really good question, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor, to Councillor Freeman. I do appreciate the comments you made on the Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan and the scope subwatershed study there. The Beaver Creek tributaries was much larger, and we did extend it further into the township to make sure we picked up that drainage area. One of the things that we've done with this study is we've taken a look and overlaid the drainage areas, and I think we have picked up the drainage area associated with the tributaries here, a little bit different than Beaver Creek. They're not quite as large. And in fact, the one main tributary is actually coming down into kind of crossing Conservation Road and then partly into the Herbsville South District. So we actually have quite a bit of information on, I think we're kind of at the headwaters, if you will, of that tributary that's on the east side of Herbsville, and it's coming down into Herbsville South. So there'll be kind of a bit of information sharing between what was done with Herbsville South and then what's going to be done with Herbsville North. And then the tributary to kind of the west, it's kind of central to the west side. Picture, even to Councillor Bodley's comments, a good part of this study area, not a good part, a portion of the study area is the ESL outside the urban boundary. So we're going to look at that and how that's interacting with the lands within the urban boundary, but there's no intent to look at what happens outside of the urban boundary, and there's no intent to look at that ESL limit either. So I think the study area and the 120 meters is going to give us enough coverage. If we're finding we need some more, we'll make sure that we pick that up as part of the study.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like, I'd rather that staff come back to council and say we need to expand it before we're done than to just say, well, we thought we got it all, but we didn't, but this is the line in the sand that we drew, so we're gonna honor it. I'd rather that you come back. And like how those environmentally sensitive lands function together with these lands, I think is important too, like understanding the migrations that happen through this area and all that kind of thing. So I just don't want to miss this. And the other thing that I wondered about was maybe you could, while you're at the microphone, speak a little bit about how granular you're looking to go in the district plan.
Before we leave that topic, though, I just wanted to be clear, like, did you want to add an additional recommendation or make any addition, like something in writing? Because, you know, these plans live for a long time.
Yeah.
So just to make sure it's captured, or I'm not sure how you want to proceed with that.
I feel like I'm heard. Like, I think that, you know, that MHBC understands. I know that everyone who's working on this project in the room understands what I'm talking about. And Mr. Armson's nodding his head. And I just, the last thing I want is a report coming to me that says, well, this was the line we drew in the sand, but it didn't make sense down the road, but we didn't, it's gotta be done right the first time, so. Just.
No, I 100% agree. I just
Yeah,
want
and-
to, for the long term, make sure that is captured.
I mean, do you need direction?
To that, Mr. Armson?
Thanks, Mayor McCabe. Through you to Councillor Freeman. And Councillor Freeman, your memory is quite accurate. There were some needs to revisit some of the initial scope that was defined in the previous Beaver Creek Meadows scope subwatershed study. I will say the benefit of those previous studies is that they're actually informing this one now. So we do have a better understanding of the watershed characteristics, the groundwater elevations, all of the things that you will recall were important to us last time. And I do think the commitment from the broader consulting team, landowners and staff, GRCA, MNR, those that would be involved in this would be to make sure if there are question marks from the initial field work and the initial draft reporting that's produced, we would certainly not approve it. We would go back and look at whatever amendments are needed to make sure that we capture all the required data points. Yeah.
No, I think that's super, and I appreciate that. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Armson. Just wanted to make sure for, you know, these are things that last a long time. So you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, it was with regard to the granularity of the district plan. You know, sometimes we get pushback to say that the plans are too granular, and sometimes we get pushback to say that they're not granular enough. I would say that, you know, it seems to me that plans that are a little bit more granular are something that staff can lean into when we go back and look at them 10 years down the road. And that didn't happen with the district plan, I would say, for my ward in Ward 4 around the Rim Park area. That was not a very granular plan, and so I think that's left a lot up for discussion that the neighborhood doesn't really understand, you know, what the intention is and what areas are protected and so on. So, you know, my preference would be to see a plan that's a little bit more granular in terms of districts and protected areas and road networks and that kind of thing.
Through Madam Chair, I'll just say maybe the perfect balance of granularity is what we're going to aim for. But I think, and Tristan can comment, what we're anticipating is we could prepare a district plan that will identify for sure. We're going to know where the natural areas are, where the storm ponds are, where the parks are, the collector roads. But I think we can also have additional information that will show an overall, maybe more granular conceptual approach. We're going to have a lot of detail just for this area. By the end of the study, I think we'll know where the ponds are, what the sizes are. We'll know ideally where the parks are, what the sizes are, and then kind of build the structure of what the district will look like. will give some idea to the ranges and types of uses in the various blocks. So I think the public will understand, this is a block where there may be some lower density, this will be some higher density, and then have some policy direction on what that will look like. So I think it's going to be probably a little more detail. I think it is a block where there's a lot of existing. So for example, Snowcrest Place, it's part of the study area, it's existing. We're not proposing to change anything there. Really the primary component of this district plan would be the new development areas. And I think we'll have enough information to get that to a level that really everyone can understand, and it's fairly straightforward to implement with the next stages. It would be the zoning and the subdivision plans.
Thank you. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Freeman actually, in her first line of questioning, asked much more eloquently all of the questions that I was worried about with there because of the environmentally sensitive lands, and were we going far enough out? It's one thing to go to the urban boundary, but as we've been talking about, there's a big impact from those that are from the environmentally sensitive lands that are just outside the boundary. So I'm pleased with hearing that it's going to be a little bit more inclusive. And also looking at that fine balance of granularity. I think that's going to be really, really important as we look at it. It also going forward for the public as we continue to look at what use of land is possible there and helping from an education standpoint. I was pleased to see in your timeline that right at the moment you've got 3 different public consultations and a 4th being the ones that will come forward to council. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to build on in your communication back to us what was said at each one of those, or what were your takeaways and how that's informed the next stages. So just something to keep in mind. But I appreciate what you've outlined here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I'm going to put my flood risk hat on right now. This is what everybody, I think, expects me to say now. On page 84 of the report, we have a map that really shows the significance of the wetlands in that block. And those wetlands perform ecosystem services. And I'm wondering whether, as part of phase 1, in terms of establishing the background on existing conditions, whether we're considering evaluation of what those ecosystem benefits are, because all waters are connected, and downstream, the downstream community is impacted by whatever we're doing upstream. And I just point to the recent class action suit against the city of Oakville in terms of the balance between upstream or the impacts of upstream development on the downstream community. That was settled in July, and so, I don't think that there's any sort of case study precedence there that's particularly relevant right now, but it is a consideration for us. It's all part of that sub-watershed of the Laurel Creek. So I'm just wondering, again, just going back to the idea of doing evaluation of the ecosystem services that exist in that little section. And then I'm just going to add one other little thing on here. The completed studies are pretty old. Even M&R's flood hazard limit is from 2002. So factoring in the climate change impacts of an accelerated hydrological cycle, there was a paper that Natalia Mudrak and Blair Feltmate published back in 2017 that modeled what a Hurricane Hazel event would do to the Laurel Creek sub-watershed. And what's interesting about that is that we do have actual data from June 2004 to build off. There was a very, very intense rainfall. It was a localized storm, generated about 160 millimeters of rainfall in 4 hours, 202 millimeters of rainfall in 24 hours in that section of Waterloo, that northwest corner. And that has already been modeled all the way through the watershed. And so that's the kind of thing that I think we should be thinking about in that phase 1 component of this, in terms of creating background conditions that are thinking about the reality that we're moving into. This is not out of the realm of possibility that we'll get a Hurricane Hazel rainfall. That's just part of our new reality. So if there's a way to factor some of that work into the phase one, I think it would be really appreciated.
Through you, Madam Chair, just for information, where we're at with some of the environmental, we have already started a lot of the monitoring, and that's been ongoing for probably a couple of years now. So when you reference, 2002 M&R, we acknowledge that, and actually what we'll be doing is building on the model that was done for a combination of Herbsville South and the Conservation District, Beaver Creek Conservation Meadows District, scope subwatershed study. So our team will be working with GRCA to develop essentially a new model that will include these lands. And so that we're kind of collecting that information now to plug into the model. This report will look at pre and post information from a stormwater management perspective, and then provide directions and criteria for consideration as we get to the next level of detail, the plans of subdivision. But I'm anticipating at this stage we'll again have a really good idea with the MESP on how the pre and post conditions will look, how we'll be looking at stormwater management ponds and design of those, and pervious and impervious areas. So that the study will look at all that. It will use current information, current modeling. And from an environmental perspective, we have been out in the field with city staff, GRCA staff, and regional staff. So we have flagged and all agreed on the limits of the natural areas and surveyed those limits. So we know that as a starting point for base conditions for the existing conditions plan, and then we'll work through all of the details as we move forward. And there'll be alternatives on land use and how we deal with engineering and infrastructure. But I think that won't be alternatives on how we deal with important matters and making sure we're dealing with flooding and stormwater management and those types of details.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if Tristan, you wanted to add, I see you nodding along at some of the things. I just wanted to make sure if you had anything that you wanted to add to that from the city's perspective.
Nothing specific to add other than the city will remain involved throughout this process. Any reporting that comes in will have to be approved by city staff, make sure that it actually is answering the questions we need answered and acceptable before we move on to the next phases.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wright, you had a
just to follow up through you, Mayor, on the existing wetland and the ecosystem services. Do we have a current baseline for what that valuation would be?
I'm not sure what you mean by current baseline. We do have we will have a baseline based on the monitoring that we've been doing for the existing conditions study, which we're working on. We do have the delineation of the features themselves, so we have an understanding of how the monitoring information we have and the kind of physical attributes of the features themselves. So that will be part of kind of the existing conditions analysis.
Okay, I think what I'm getting at really is that it's natural infrastructure in its current state. And so it does perform a stormwater function. And so having an idea of what that is and what it contributes can sometimes be helpful, like in terms of even something like our asset management system. And as we start to incorporate green infrastructure and natural infrastructure into that asset management system, understanding the value of those intact ecosystem services is really helpful.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Councillor Wright, for reminding us of that. And I know, Councillor Bodley, you said you had some comments. Just a couple quick questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rowe, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, I was wondering, I saw on page 25, I believe, of the report that there will be some engagement with the Indigenous community. And so I'm wondering if you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, we do have that as part of the public consultation plan. That is something where we will certainly be collaborating with the city and using the city's connection as a resource for that. And maybe, Tristan, you could speak to that.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Rowe. So yeah, it is identified within the terms of reference. The process that will follow will be to utilize staff's resource of Brian Hill, our Indigenous Initiative advocate, to kind of outline what the proposal is and kind of get guidance on the best way to engage with local Indigenous communities to see how they want to be involved and give them the opportunity through some sort of targeted engagement events outside of the public consultation that's already outlined within the report, or terms of reference.
And then, sorry, I just wanted to clarify that then will their feedback be taken into consideration moving forward? On what phase, I guess, is what I'm wondering. Not perhaps the terms of reference, but also moving forward. I don't know if you can answer that right now. That might be at like the next council meeting, but I'm just curious.
Just a general answer would be, we'll have a plan, we'll have the engagement, and we'll work through discussions and information sharing both ways. That will be important. And we will be reporting on kind of all the input that we receive from agencies and the public as part of a phase 1, maybe phase 2 report, kind of like a what did we hear report. So we will have all of that in part of moving forward as we start to look at identifying alternatives and preferred alternatives. So all of that feedback will go into identifying alternatives, and then a specific component of the MESP, there is going to be consultation requirement, and that input then feeds into consideration and criteria associated with selecting a preferred alternative.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. That was going to be one of my questions as well. And I have to say, I mean, this is one of the first district plans that I've gone through in my 2 years in office. But I'm a little surprised and I guess a bit disappointed to hear that consultation with like Six Nations or First Nations hasn't actually started yet. That this is a phase 1, the next phase, or maybe a second phase approach, because I would have thought that they would have been involved, from the outset. So I don't know if you care to comment on that. And I guess I'm also a little bit concerned. I think what I heard, and you can correct me, David, is that you're expecting the city to lead that part, but my understanding was, I'm not sure who the landowners are with this, but that would be something that comes from the landowners, certainly in concert with the city, but I certainly don't, it sort of feels like maybe you are offloading this to the city, where I would have expected the landowners to lead this part of it. So if you could comment on that, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I would say, so there has been initial reach out already relative to the archaeological assessments that had been initiated. So there has been some reach out to the Indigenous communities in that regard. So there is an understanding of that this is a project that is happening just through that information sharing. With regard to leading the consultation, we do have a communications public consultation firm that's engaged. We will be leading the consultation discussion. I think what we're trying to say is we know that the city has an internal resource. We want to use that resource, and we want to kind of be working together to make sure that consultation occurs in a way, if the city has a protocol or strategy, we want to be making sure that we're following that, and we want to make sure that we're reaching out and doing the appropriate consultation and getting the input and feedback throughout the entire process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I guess maybe with future reports you can build that additional information in, because it certainly it felt like a real gap in the information that was provided here. And what you said today, is important. I would just also, remind you that the Six Nations, their staff they don't have a huge staff component, so I expect that some of these things take longer, right? Because there's only so many staff to go around, and they're being asked to consult on a lot of projects and developments, et cetera. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that as well. But thank you for your answer. Councillor Bodley, you had some comments?
Yeah.
Apologies. I didn't actually ask my one last question. Everyone's asked my questions. I just wanted to double check if you're building in access for GRT, or like what kind of consideration you've given to regional transit, because we know in some developments on the west side, there's a lack of GRT service, and so I would not want that to be the case in any new developments that come online. Active transportation, but also GRT. Is that being thought of and through this process, or is that too granular at this stage?
Through you, Mayor McCabe, the GRT is being engaged as part of the technical review committee through the region of Waterloo, so they are involved. They will be involved in the project. It's too early yet to say what that will look like as far as service in the area, but certainly they are going to be engaged. They're going to be able to provide feedback for the studies and the eventual district plan.
Right. Thank you. And I just know that, like in some of the some of the developments that have happened over on the west side, just with the way the roadways were laid out, it really made it continues to make GRT service really challenging. So I would not want that to happen again for any new developments like this coming online. So thank you. Oates, did you have something you wanted to add, Dave?
I would just add that I think part of what we'll be doing early on, and when we're looking at the district plan and collector roads and local roads, is we will be looking at a road network that will incorporate transit. Whether or not GRT says, oh, we're coming there in a year or two, we're going to do the district plan design to plan for it so that it's ready when they do go there.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear. Thank you. Councillor Bodley, now it's your turn.
I did press the button beforehand. It's fine. Thank you. Thank you through Mayor McCabe, and thank you to the rest of my council colleagues for the questions that they asked. I have a couple of comments, no need to respond. A couple of the comments are from concerns that residents in the area have highlighted to me, and I just want to put those on the public record. Particularly those, especially since the primary study area includes Snowcrest, there are residents in that area who are keen or eager to understand how they can have water, sanitary, gas, and other services in that area. And as they are off the grid with respect to that at the moment, and I know there's a lot of work happening with respect to the reconstruction of Conservation Drive and other things going on there, but I wanted to highlight that as a concern from some residents in that area. I also wanted to highlight, just from my perspective, to the perfect amount of granularity commentary. I think given everything that's happening in this whole area, like the Beaver Creek Meadows district plan has been approved for many years and is hopefully about to be actioned by the development community in that area. We have the Herbsville South Block plan, which has been approved. We've got this area now, and sort of to the idea of different drawn lines on a map, ensuring that we're building a complete community out here that's going to be aligned with where next week's official plan update is going to come in around commercial and parks and active transportation and all of that stuff. I hope that's going to, and I'm confident that that's going to be a big part of how all of these areas interact with one another and connect with one another in terms of those key pieces, including schools. And I wanted to just take a second. I know you can sort of hear from council how much environmental concerns, the number of questions that emerge from council around environmental concerns out here. And of course, that's a huge concern of mine too. But I was pleased, notwithstanding the commentary from Councillor Freeman around the scope sub-watershed study, and I appreciate her expertise on this in this matter and her history here. But I was really pleased to see that you can sort of sense that from the entirety of the terms of reference, the amount of reference to the ESL especially, but also the ESPA, various wetlands and woodlands in the area, all the core environmental features, groundwater recharge areas. Like it does come across that this is a huge and very important part of the terms of reference as we're moving forward. And even the habitat assessment, seeing things like the dozens of different animals that are out there, peregrine falcons, bald eagles. It's a beautiful, wonderful area of the city. And so how we're going to ensure that we coexist amongst the water, amongst the core environmental features amongst the ESL and our wildlife friends is really important. And so I wanted to highlight that I think that we've done a really, really good job of ensuring that that's a key part of this terms of reference. And then the last thing that I will just highlight from a comment perspective is a comment that I also received from some residents with respect to how we're furthering and continuing to protect the ESL going forward, especially beyond the Snowcrest boundary. I received this comment from some residents in this area, and it happens to be something that I agree with, so I'm going to highlight this publicly as well, is around how do we ensure that that area from Snowcrest to the Wilmot line, where the ESL really starts, is not an area where people are driving through, where we're heavily salting, where there's a lot of dumping, garbage dumping that goes on in that area. And how do we really preserve that area for future generations beyond just the planning designations that we've given to that area? And in particular, a suggestion from some residents in that area around whether we would consider closing Conservation Drive at Snowcrest to vehicular access, and potentially looking at making that a cycling, pedestrian sort of route. And that might be well beyond the scope of this particular study, but it's something that I think I would like to highlight publicly in order to preserve the ESL area, but also keep people off the Wilmot line, ensuring that vehicular access is put onto the roads that we've designed them for, like Herbsville, the regional roads where more traffic is supposed to be. So I'll leave it there, and I'm really pleased to see this move forward. I know this is one of the last pieces of greenfield development in the entire city, and ensuring that we get this right the first time, as Councillor Freeman alluded to, is really important. But I am excited to see this move forward and see what this whole area is going to look like in the generations to come. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tristan, and thank you, Dave, for participating as well. So there are a couple of recommendations with this. I'm looking for a mover, moved by Councillor Bodley, and a seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All in favor, that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item here, there's no presentation. It's a land donation, 0 Wilmot Line, Waterloo. There are a couple of recommendations with this as well, but Council, do you have any questions around this? Okay, you have a comment? I'm just wondering, maybe Robin, just if you could give just a really brief explanation of why behind this, just for people who may be listening, who didn't read the whole report. If you could just, give just a brief overview of why this is happening.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. So the city has been approached by a family that is interested in gifting 3.69 acres on the Wilmot Line. The lands are designated environmentally sensitive and would become an extension of the Forested Hills ESPA. The land is currently undeveloped, sorry. So there's no development on the land. It's essentially under 100% tree canopy. So this maybe leads into Councillor Bodley's question at the end there. How do we protect that area, maybe through land acquisition? It should be noted that the land is not suitable for active or passive parkland development, so that isn't the intent of this acquisition.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful just for anyone listening now or later. Thanks very much, Robin. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to move this, and through you, Mayor, just wanted to take some time from the Horseshoe here to thank that family for this donation. You know, as everyone in the city, and particularly those who live in Ward 2, know, the ESL and that ESP area that we just referenced in the previous item that came before council is a vital asset to the city, not only for not only as a passive recreational asset, but as a crucial natural resource, as Councillor Wright had alluded to earlier. We appreciate the family maintaining this previously private land. It's very showing leadership in sort of how to ensure that this land is preserved for generations to come. So I thank them for that. But that said, and to what you were talking about, Robin, I've always believed that true and lasting environmental stewardship or protection requires or necessitates public ownership. And so it's really great to see this piece of property coming into the hands of the city so that we can ensure that it remains as it is for generations to come. So on behalf of residents in Ward 2 and across the whole city, just wanted to thank that family very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion for all of the same reasons mentioned by Councillor Bodley, but I did have a quick question for staff. So when we received the gift of the McNally lands, we went through a zoning process so that we could kind of put the highest level of environmental protection on the land. In that particular case, I think the land wasn't part of the ESL, so there was some concern on the McNally properties, and I just wondered whether we needed to go through that process as well.
Thanks for your
And sorry,
question.
just for background, the reason why we did that was because as our council right now, we might think this is very important to maintain this land as environmentally protected land, but it was kind of a way of signaling to future councils that it's zoned open space, and that if another future council wanted to do something different with it, they'd have to go through a public process to make or affect change to that land.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman, for that additional information. Did you want to answer that, Robin, or should we look to Mr. Ormson?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Councillor Freeman. I might need to ask Mr. Anderson's tap into his vast memory bank, or Mr. Cotter's in the room as well. But you're right, Councillor Freeman. My recollection is when we acquired the McNally lands, there were a few stipulations, and it might have been an agreement of purchase and sale with the family even, such that we decommissioned a water well, we took down some structures with the understanding that it wouldn't be reused for any other purposes. In terms of any of the planning approvals or changes that took place, I'd have to refer to perhaps Joel, if he could recall.
And it looks like he's pulling up a map or something like that there. Thank you, Ron. We'll just give him a minute to. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you. It appears that the lands are within the ESL, either 1 or ESL 2 zoning categories. So those are categories that we created through the comprehensive zoning bylaw, specifically for the northwest corner of the property, given its environmental sensitivity. So I suspect the zoning is already in place to protect the lands. Thank you.
I think through the mayor to Councillor Freeman, also the report indicates, and I would have to follow up with legal counsel, we were looking at a protective covenant be registered on title. So that's in kind of the second paragraph of that executive summary.
And thank you. And Mr. Anderson, did you want to add anything?
Just confirming, Mayor, what Joel referred to. We do have noted in the report the zoning is ESL 2, so woodland zoned, environmentally sensitive land. So I think we're in a good spot there. And as Robin noted, it is contiguous with adjacent city-owned lands.
Great. Thank you very much for that information and clarification. And if there's no other questions, then we have Councillor Bodley who's moved this and Councillor Freeman who seconded it. Did you all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Robin. Okay, so the next item is the funding release for the non-routine building capital renewal project and the Uptown Rink renewal project. There are 5 recommendations here. Council, does anyone have any questions? Did you say you'd move it? Moved by Councillor Freeman. If seeing no questions, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Roach. All in favor? That is carried. look forward to hopefully the temperatures dropping so we can get out there on the rink soon. I know everyone shares that perspective. Not so much. Okay, the next item is the City of Waterloo Brownfield Tax Increment Grant, the program renewal. Does anyone have any questions about this? Seeing none, I just did have one, well, comment, I guess, more than a question. I mean, you could come forward, Kristen. Part of what this made me think about, and actually, I had emailed Justin and maybe you as well, Kristen, a week or so ago, was just about the amount. I don't know that if we have a report that gives us a sense of how many properties across Waterloo are brownfields, and sort of what, if there's any that we're potentially looking at to, get cleaned up so that they can be redeveloped. I realize that these are privately owned properties for the most part, but just wondered if there is a report that can be provided to council so we have sort of an overarching view of that. And my second question is just, is this something that would be appropriate for our Economic Development Committee to review and comment on, and maybe we could strategize on what to do with some of these properties?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. We don't actually have a holistic inventory of brownfield sites. Ultimately, what happens usually is they're triggered through the redevelopment process in terms of somebody would like to redevelop a property, they go for financing, and often the financial institutions will ask for the environmental studies to be done. And usually the phase one will identify if there'd been any at-risk previous uses, and then through that process they may have to go into in-depth studies, which is the purpose of this program, would be then to help fund that when they're required to go through the phase one, phase two environmental cleanup process. It can get quite expensive. So some of the sites could have been older sites due to they may even be impacted by neighboring properties. If a gas station, for example, was nearby, it can lead to potential contamination of groundwater that moves, or it can shift sites. So I think for a number of those reasons, we haven't really maintained a list. It's more on a case-by-case basis when a property identifies that it has to go through this process, that it would become eligible for the program.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'm wondering if it would make sense, like given all the redevelopment that's happening, and there's this sort of ongoing discussion, and you hear about Waterloo's landlocked, and we want to maintain that countryside line, and then you think about there are some locations. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head that, despite that, they are brownfield, they are contaminated. We don't own them; they are privately owned, but they're in some cases in some really prime redevelopment locations. So I'm just wondering if given all these pressures that we have with sort of really broad development in general and our housing targets and all that kind of stuff, if it would make sense at this point to get that list together so that we can take a look at it, and maybe through the Economic Development Committee, have some discussions about what might be possible, or where we would go from here.
Maybe I'll take that one through you, or to you, Mayor. I think I may want to defer a little bit, perhaps, to our engineering folks. I think there would be a pretty considerable cost and effort to put that list together. You have to basically drill and do work of that kind of engineering work to really confirm if sites are a certain way. And as you mentioned, a lot of them are potentially on private sector sites. I think we can kind of predict generally kind of where potential contamination is based on what previous uses existed on those sites. So if there was a tire factory or a leather factory or something like of that nature, it's pretty safe that there's going to be pretty safe bet that there will be contamination in that area. If there was, as Krista mentioned, if there was a laundromat that had been long-serving, chances are within a certain range around that property, there's going to be contamination. So I think our ActDev committee had a role in this originally when it was created about 10 years ago, and wanted to kind of put this in place as a catch-all to sort of cover those issues when they came up. You could look at the program and determine, and maybe have the ActDev committee look and see if there's some ways to make it more incentivized. I know at one point in time we did have DCs as part of the incentive package that the region was putting forward, and over time shifted that to be more of a TIG type of incentive, which is less of an incentive, I think developers would argue, than versus, say, a DC type of exemption or incentive. And so there's potentially some structural things that we could look at if council's interested in making it more incentivized for developers to sort of jump on board with the program. I'll maybe defer to some experts on terms of how to construct a list or how that would look. But I do suspect there would be some costs associated with putting that together.
Okay, I mean, partly, even like with what you were just saying, like I don't know that we ever had tire factories in Waterloo, but maybe we did. I don't know. But like laundromats, gas stations, those are two former uses that come to mind where, we would suspect that there's contamination. I mean, even if we just started with some of those things that are more easily identified, and like, would that take much work to just, I'm not talking about going into engineering work, but like you said, if there was a laundromat there, or I would say a gas station, and there may be some other kind of ones that, we know have polluted, like, could we at least start with that and then kind of have a bit of an understanding of how many sites we're talking about, and then lead into that policy discussion around whether we may need to look at DCs or some other incentives?
Sort of a suspected list.
Yes, the usual suspects, I guess you could say. Councillor Hanmer.
I guess through you, Mayor, thank you, Justin. Just building on that comment. Unless we know sort of the potential magnitude or the suspect list, and I think that's really the way to look at it. What triggered for me was when you said this policy hadn't really been looked at in its entirety for about 10 years. And we've got a lot more, we've got different people around WEDAC, so it might be worthwhile. There may be some other ideas that come forward too. So I certainly would support if there's enough time to do it, to make sure that we have it as an agenda item for next year for WEDAC. I don't want it to delay what we're doing for today, but I think it would be a good review to go forward for next year.
Does that can we leave that with you, Justin and Tim? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just echoing your comments, there are, like, especially in Ward 7, which has had different land use implications over time, there are a couple of spots that we actually know about. They either have hold provisions on them, or they're known contamination areas. And so I would really encourage that we start with that list, just because of the pressures of infill development, and knowing where those are, and council being aware of where they are, I think would be really helpful. And then we can start to consider what the incentive package might be. Like, if the TIG program is really geared towards larger scale developers, there might be some incentives that we could explore, like Kristen, you had mentioned the community improvement plan. That could be triggered for smaller scale developers or infill development. And so I think it's really worth looking at that at this point.
Thank you. So I feel like I see consensus around the table here for that. And I see you standing, Ryan. I assume that you have some thoughts on this, but maybe you could just provide that directly to Kristen or Justin. Yeah, you're not registered. Sorry, you're not registered as a delegate. So, yeah. But you're welcome to provide that information directly to either to us or to Kristen and Justin or Julie. Thanks. Okay, so we have. I mean, this again, to be clear, the discussion that we just had isn't going to slow down any of the recommendations that are here. So I'm not sure if I saw a mover or a seconder for that. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hanmer, moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. So moving on, consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There are no notices of motions. There's no communications and correspondence. There's no unfinished question or unfinished business. Council, are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, I wanted to follow up with staff. Some direction that council gave last year was with regard to a banner program associated with veterans down Regina Street. And so I was hoping that we could reinvigorate that and see if we could work with the local legions and make that happen for Remembrance Day next year. And I know that not everyone was at the 5:30 branch for the Remembrance Night dinner, but Councillor Wright's husband had also spoken about a program that he's working on with the Legion, and this could really tie into that. And then the other thing I was hoping is that we could paint a veterans crosswalk at Regina Street where it crosses into the cenotaph. So some people may have already seen them. They're a ladder crosswalk. They're red and white, and they have the black image of, like a shadow image of a soldier from the First World War. And I just think it would be really nice to start creating a space around the cenotaph that more broadly represents and recognizes the veterans that have served year-round, not just on November 11th. And I, to be honest, like, I'm gonna say that a high school teacher here in town told me that only 4 out of all of the public high schools in the region had Remembrance Day services in their schools. And I think that's really sad. And so as a city, I think we can start looking at ways that we can help remember throughout the year, when the whole point was that Remembrance Day wasn't going to be a holiday anymore because, you know, they would talk about Remembrance Day in schools and there'd be this great educational opportunity, but it seems like that's dropping off. And so I don't know whether I need like a motion for direction on this. I'm happy to make it and see if I can get support.
I think we can turn to Mr. Bowman for some comments.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, excuse me, we can certainly reinvigorate the project that was discussed with the banners. We'll work with our communications team as well as our museum on trying to get something together.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm happy to sit a table with the Legions to make that happen, because I think the Legions are well positioned to maybe lead how the banners, or, lead sponsorship of the banners or something to that effect.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Freeman, for raising that, and Commissioner Bowman. A couple other things that when I did my tour of the various legions and over this past Remembrance Day, just a couple other things they raised was that they were looking for designated parking for veterans on Remembrance Day and for people with mobility issues close to the cenotaph, and that in our communications that we send out around Remembrance Day, that we include that there's seating available, again, close to the cenotaph, because apparently people aren't aware, and then that changes the decision of whether or not they can make it there or not. Yeah. Thank you, if you can take that away as well.
And I just had a separate question, totally separate
so
to this.
so thanks very much on that front. Councillor Freeman, you had another question?
With regard to the ladder crosswalk, do I need to send direction for that?
Do you want to respond, Tim? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I can, Mayor. Maybe on behalf of IPPW, we'll take that under advisement and report back once we kind of flush out the details, and if there's any financial needs going forward, we'll come back to council on that. But our intent will be to consider both for 2025 implementation.
Great. And then I just had a separate question not related to either of those two things.
Just if when in these conversations, we could include the BAA, particularly around the banner. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
My other question is for Mr. Henderson. In my ward, we had painted basically a road edge along Lee with the intention of reducing traffic volumes, speeds. But what got lost is that the center line is no longer visible. And so the value of narrowing those travel lanes has been reduced because there's no center line. And I'm hopeful that we can reestablish the center line on Lee. Hopefully before the paint time closes for the season.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman, thanks for bringing that up. I know staff have evaluated the effectiveness of that. I'm thinking that it might have gotten lost in translation as that center line is fairly new in our inventory, and it might not be on our GIS layer. So we'll certainly add that to that layer and ensure that the line is reinstated. It's at a time in the season where it might not be possible, but if it's not, it'll be certainly scheduled for the spring 25.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Any other questions from council? Nope, seeing none. Okay. New business. We do have a late starter report, which is the ratification of Staff Association Agreement 2025 to 2028. Kathy Weedhouse and Natasha, apologies, I don't remember your name off the top, are here to answer any questions that council you may have. Are there any questions, council? Nope, then I would just say this is, we appreciate the work that went into by the bargaining teams on all sides. We appreciate the work and the conversation and the discussion that went into this. On behalf of our staff, we're a public service organization, and staff are really important, obviously, to execute on the wide variety of projects and programs that the city runs on an annual and long-term basis. So thanks to everyone involved with reaching this agreement. So with that, I'm looking for a mover, Councillor Bassick, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so enactment of bylaws. Oh, sorry, yeah, we did do new business. Okay, new business continued. Okay, Councillor Bassick.
Through you, Mayor, I would want everyone to know that the Button Factory's holiday market is on until December 21st. They had their opening on Saturday. It was lovely, hot chocolate, apple cider, very easy crafts, which I still somehow messed up. I always do one more thing than I should on a craft. Anyways, I threw it away. But most people made beautiful ornaments, and I believe all of you could have as well. And the little gift shop they have there, Emma, who's the new-ish ED, she's been there for a year, has completely revamped the space and has made it so gorgeous, and it's just a lovely shopping experience, and the curation is gorgeous, and there's so many beautiful handmade items. So I would definitely highly recommend checking it out.
Thank you, Councillor Bassick. A good reminder to shop local and to support local artisans and small businesses. Councillor Road.
And I'll do the same. There's a Christmas Creators Market this Saturday at 400 Northfield, Pastor Marty's church. Yeah, so all day on Saturday. So we have the local craftsmen or craftspeople, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sounds fun if you are into making crafts and ornaments and all things like that. Thank you, Councillor. Did you have, oh, I just saw your microphone was on, but you're good? Okay, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, so very exciting anniversary coming up on December 1st. The KW Chamber Society is turning 60. So if you've ever met the Narvisons, who for years ran the music room on Yonge Street, It's no longer running out of their home, this concert series. But there's a special anniversary concert at First United Church. And it's a performance of the Brahms Piano Quintet, which is the most gorgeous piece. And I would just recommend that if you are looking for an exciting Sunday evening, you should come out for that.
Very nice. Sounds lovely indeed. Anyone else, council? Okay. Thank you very much for, again, there's always all kinds of things happening in the community. Thanks for everyone who attends these, who organizes them, and then council members who attend them. Okay, enactment of bylaws, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. And adjournment, Councillor Bodley. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, council and staff. Have a great night, everyone, in person and online.